It's my pleasure to introduce Alexander Darvill. That's very posh, isn't it? Can we call you Alex?
Yeah, Alex is fine.
Okay, Alex would be great. Alex and Pauli from Rolls-Royce, and they're going to talk about the Orpheus project.
Yes,
and
please.
With no further ado, crack on.
Thank you very much, Keith, and thank you everybody for having us here today. So, my name is Alex, and I'm with my pal Pauli. We'll be talking about the Orpheus project, which we're really excited about. Pauli will give the starting bit, I'll do the second half, and this is a project which really means a lot to me, and really has changed the way that I see how I work with people, how I work with teams, and hopefully we'll tell our story, and hopefully we can talk more about that afterwards as well. Over to you, Pauli.
Thanks, Alex. Can you all hear at the back, by the way? All good, thank you. Right, so as Alex said, we're going to talk about Orpheus, which I'm going to let Steve Hodder, who you don't know but is our customer, if this button works, there we go, describe in a nutshell how exciting this was. So this is a project that we started a few years ago. We both work in Rolls-Royce, gas turbines in the defence part of the business, and we started a project with the MOD which allowed us to effectively rip up the rule book and do things differently. And seeing a quote like this from our customer saying it's the most remarkable thing he'd seen in 30 years of working with propulsion teams was not just great validation that we'd done good things, but made us very happy that our customer was also on the same page as we were. As Alex says, it's been quite a crazy ride, really. We've both been knocking around the business for a while. I've certainly lost all my hair while I've been there. And it's been the most exciting 4 or 5 years of my career. It's changed how we think about work, how we work together with teams. We've already changed how 50, 100 people think about that, and we're starting to share that across the broader business now. So that will become thousands. And I believe that through the products that we're developing in a different way, we're actually going to impact the lives of millions of people in a better way as well. So it truly has been quite remarkable, as Steve says. So we've got an agenda, although we won't talk that long about any of them. What we will do initially is talk about why do we need to change. And I guess particularly when we kicked this off a few years back, you do have to press this button hard, there we go. It's all about making sure we're keeping pace with the world around us. I'm sure most of us around the room recognise that things aren't the same as when we grew up. I was saying to Lauren this morning, the population in the world's doubled since I was born. You know, that sort of thing just feels crazy, but things are changing a lot. Technology drives change, etc. In the world of military gas turbines, the last time we did a twin-spool engine just in the UK was the same time that Audi Quattro was on the market. So that was in the mid-80s. I wasn't quite old enough to drive them, but I certainly hankered after one. But what that meant was that a lot of the skill, the capability to be able to design, build, test a whole engine like that, and this is quite a complex system, a gas turbine, that capability was eroded over the years. We've done development work of different types, but never tried to do that whole thing in one go. And what we wanted to do was try and get to a place where we could do that better in the fast-paced environment that we now live in. We had COVID. Everyone remembers that, I think, still. We actually kicked the project off 2 months after the first lockdown. So we didn't see the whole team together for probably 18 months. And that's actually quite easy to forget, the way we work now. But it was amazing how we were actually still able to work, create a team, and the team were able to achieve what they did when they couldn't see each other. They couldn't be together. So that was another part of the environment that was challenging. We're looking at climate change, what that's doing, and how the focus is moving towards drivers to protect our environment for the future. And much more of what we need to do today is focused around that. We've obviously got a more contested world as well. I mean, sadly, this picture of the Ukrainian army that's still ongoing, and that's driving a lot of concern around the defence world. We've obviously seen a lot of challenge in the Middle East as well recently as well. So if you look at a lot of the capability that some of those countries are using now, they are developing their tactics, their ways of fighting on a battlefield very quickly, and that includes using the technology that's around to do that as well. So how can we help our government and our armed forces to be able to react to that much faster? From a business point of view as well, there are lots of companies now who are starting to break with the traditional blue chip approach to developing product and taking a long time overdoing it, and potentially cost as well. SpaceX is the example we've got here. They've got some great stuff that we've learnt from, and Alex will talk a bit about that later. But there are many more disruptors, and what we don't want in the gas turbine world is to get overtaken by a disruptor. There's quite a high barrier to entry there already. It's difficult to do a gas turbine, but there are companies that are starting to do it around the world. So we need to make sure that we're able to compete at a business level and be sustainable. And then the last picture there is the Tempest aircraft, which is actually the UK's biggest defence project at the moment. Rolls-Royce is a key player in that. It is a big programme. How can we help learn for that programme so that they can do things quicker, cheaper, faster, and come up with a better product as well? So there's a lot of change going on, and in a nutshell, we wanted to try and see what we could find to support us in getting to a great place in that change. So what was the scope? What approach did we have? So we had two goals on Orpheus. We wanted to enter and disrupt the small engine market in the military world. So Rolls-Royce hasn't built small engines, and when I say small, I'm talking about this size for any of you from the civil world who are used to this size, right? So that's how long our engine is. So we wanted to get into that market. It's quite challenging. Low cost is a big driver. We've got a lot of performance that we can offer there, but low cost is really important in that market. So we wanted to work out if we could get into that market, disrupt it, and be successful. The second objective really was to try and find a different way of working, and that's why we're here today really, is to talk about this radically different approach to working as a team. A little bit on the product itself. I won't bore you too much with this. It just shows you the type of engine it is. It is small. It's pitched at going into things like UAVs. It's scalable, so that hopefully if we can get a product spun out of it, it will be applicable to various aircraft and markets. And it brings some technological benefits that we believe customers will want in the future as well. And it is part of that future combat air system that the Ministry of Defence is preparing, along with the Tempest programme. So the approach we took was to build a small engine demonstrator, really to prove that our tools and methods would work, and to use that demonstrator engine as a way of driving the change in how we work as well. So Alex did some... You did? I hold you responsible for this chart. He did some benchmarking against some of our previous experience. Everybody believed it, which is great, because it is little bit subjective. We all know that if you take on a project, it's not the same as you've done before. So benchmarking something like this is always going to be a bit subjective. But Alex's data showed that previous experience would need about 100 people to do this project, and we reckoned it would take about 3 years to get something on the test bed. It's because it's a complex system. Depending on what industry you work in today, that might seem a long time, but when the life cycle of your product is decades, getting a demonstrator to test in 3 years doesn't, that's a very small part of that total life cycle. We set ourselves a challenge of doing that with half the people in half the time. And the reason we set quite an ambitious challenge there was, firstly, we wanted to succeed and do it in half the people, with half the people in half the time. But we also wanted to send a message to the team and to the business that we weren't prepared to just work harder and just cut corners and work the same we'd always worked, but just royal train everything. That's not a sustainable solution for what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a new paradigm. And having such an ambitious challenge really helped the team recognise that they were going to have to turn what they knew upside down and start almost from scratch to work out how to go do that. And that was actually really powerful in moving forwards on that front as well. So how did we get on? Pretty well. We had 2 gas turbines on the test bed within probably 19 months, 20 months, which was, there were a few jaws dropped around the business, which was nice. Some of our very senior engineers were quite sceptical that it would even start. And I think it started on the first attempt after some fuel schedule tweaks, but that's fine. It can take months, that. So we had good quality in the product that we were testing, and although we were planning an iterative process, we got loads of learning out of getting those engines onto the test bed early. We didn't quite meet the half the time, but we reckoned it was just over half the people in about half the time. So that was a major change in comparison to our benchmark. Jez Holmes, who was really the sponsor of the MOD, was delighted with the project, and that's always a good sign. And we've been able to share what we learnt there across some of our colleagues as well, and Alex will touch on that later about where we're going next with that. So I guess that's kind of the spoiler of, yes, it went very well. We're on stage here talking about it, so I guess you kind of knew that already. Alex is going to talk about how we actually did it now. I'll give you you have to push quite hard. So.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Pauli. So that sounds good. Hopefully that has given you guys a hook to now see how this will work. So before I get into that, I think we had a fairly good idea of what we wanted to do at the start, and then what that turned into was actually quite different, and that's okay. I think you have to start with intent, and then you have to learn and adapt as you go. And what we really created was an ecosystem of methods of work and how we thought about work and how our team worked. And I've got some snapshots of that to kind of share stories that hopefully will land. But it is, as I say, it was a much more organic process than maybe this comes across. The other problem I think with these kind of presentations, and we've talked about this often before, is you paint a rosy picture of rainbows and unicorns and it all worked really easily. It wasn't. It was incredibly tough. There were lots of mistakes along the way. And I think I've got a couple of examples in there, but it was really quite difficult and it was quite messy. And the point really was that we were trying to get through the messy bit on behalf of the business so we could get to something which we knew was stable for the context of Rolls-Royce, so then we could scale that in a way which was sustainable. Because the link to the Tempest program was quite important, because a program that size, you maybe cannot experiment in the same way that we were able to, because it's too messy, the stakes are that much higher. So you want to get through that learning quickly before you scale it to larger programs and other programs down Rolls-Royce that we're working with as well. So that context, so our approach was build, unlock, focus, and this is very much around the team. So our motto was build the team that builds the engine, okay? And this is quite key in that if you want to change the way that you deliver, you need to not focus on delivery itself, you need to focus on the team that are delivering for you, or that you were supporting to deliver. So we built a team, we then unlocked the team, and then we kind of focused all those talents and energy on where we needed them to go. So we went across industry, read books, we looked at YouTube, we reached out to people on LinkedIn, and we tried to absorb as much information as we could around what is the best practice out there in industry. And we dabbled and tried out all these different parts of these different systems to try and find something that worked for us. So when people say, do you use SAFe or do you use Scrum? It's like, we use a kind of mixture of all these sorts of things which works for us. And really, we present a toolbox to those looking to take this on, rather than saying this is the exact recipe. So here's the toolbox, here's some of the things you might use, but we kind of need a scalable framework which will work for you. So that's what we've been trying to come up with. So SpaceX, Spotify, Google, Skunkworks, and so Rolls-Royce, we looked at our own pedigree. There's lots of really good stuff in there. Sometimes people can go, anything that's from the old world is bad, and therefore anything from the new world is good. And actually, that's quite dangerous as well. We actually need to treat both the new and old with equal skepticism to get to the answer. and Toyota in there as well, a lot of lean thinking in there as well. So this is our team. So this team were awesome, but they were not just simply the best experts from across the business cherry-picked, okay? And the reason I can say that with confidence was that when we signed this contract, the MAD said, you're not allowed to take the resource of Tempest, which was the biggest program we had in the UK at that time, because we don't want to strip that delivery. So all the resource managers that I then had to negotiate with to get their resource off, they knew fully well that I couldn't just pull I'm the best project in town, because they already knew they were a priority. So what I got was some of the key specialists and lots of people who were eager to learn. So I really had only 2 requirements for the people coming to this team, was that they would take the equivalent of the red pill, right, the matrix decision. Like, they had to be up for something new. If I thought in any way that they were going to be balk, I guess, at the idea of doing something quite radical, it's like, this is not going to be for you. You're going to hate it. It's not going to be, it's not just part ways. You'll be fine. And the other thing was I made sure that all the skills were needed in the team to get the job done, but not necessarily everybody had the job or traditional job titles. I just made sure everybody in the team had the skills, and I had a load of people younger in their career, and that energy and between those things made it work, because this team had to be representative of Rolls-Royce at scale, okay, so that we knew it would scale across. How we built the organization. So we built around the teams and team of teams, and rather than having people coming in and out of the project, the team stayed with the program the whole way through. So the systems engineers and the system design engineers we normally had at the start of the program, then move off. We kept with them, and they ended up doing component design, they ended up doing drawings, they ended up getting on the test beds. Okay, so they stayed the whole way through. And actually, the familiarity or the purpose of the project and the familiarity with the context and problems was actually far more important necessarily than being real specialists in their skills. We still needed specialists as well, but the mix was really powerful. Here's a really important concept, which is think startup. So probably one of the biggest challenges we had were the habits of people working in Rolls-Royce for so long. So I've worked in Rolls-Royce my entire career since I was 18 years old, okay? Luckily, I've worked in some other places as well at the same time. So, but without that outside view, it's very easy to not realize there's different ways of working. And so apart from we actually deliberately went and finding the team, we tried to find people who had external experience to Rolls-Royce. We had this, I guess it's an idiom, is the right term, for every time, or coaching question we said to people, which was, guys, don't ask how Rolls-Royce would do this. Ask how you would do it, okay? Ask how you would do it with your company. So I should have asked at the beginning, did anybody recognize who's in the photo? Anybody? Steve Jobs. So Steve, this is Apple. This is Apple, okay? So Apple started in a garage. And we're saying to people, if it's you in your garage, just a few of you, would you have a long-winded low-cap process to negotiate between exchange of resources? Or would you just talk to the person to your left and say, can you do me a favor? And it's like, okay, well, start at that point of simplicity, and then only adding complexity when you absolutely have to because of scale. And this formed part of our quality system as well, which was everybody assumed the quality system meant we could only do X, Y, and Z. And we said to them, okay, well, we're going to use a different quality system. So we created our own quality system for the program. That meant local management could define it, but all you had to do is write it down and then follow it after you'd written it down, but it was local. And in the end, we actually had a quality system which was actually not that dissimilar to the principles of Rolls-Royce quality system, but it meant that people actually followed it because it was their quality system, they understood it intimately. Next, and this is probably my highlight from the program, was the way that we looked at people's potential was quite fundamentally different. So instead, normally in big companies, we'd label people with a type of worker. So like you are an Agile coach, you are a stress engineer, you are a program manager, and that's all our view of what they really are. And then we deploy that person based on that job title wherever they are in the business, if that even that Agile in itself. But in reality, people have skills from previous roles. They have potential skills in the future. And if you can see it through that lens of what people were, are, and can be, there are multiple different ways in which you can unlock people's potential. So, and the team loved this because they were learning new stuff all the time, whereas before they'd been pigeonholed their whole careers, now they're learning new stuff every day. And guess what? By the end of this program, you had people who were radically more capable than their peers or the populations they just left. And so a lot of them ended up being promoted and going back into those teams because they now delivered two gas turbines in an area where there'd been no real development of approved products previously. So there's a real good feedback loop. The people love it, and then the project gets better delivery, and that gets better delivery, gets better potential development. So it's really good. How we worked with the suppliers in the principles of Rolls-Royce, which was partnerships over contracts. So we had a very partnership type relationship with our suppliers. They thought that we were a different customer to them than normal Rolls-Royce. So we knew at any time which part was on which machinist was on it, and we made sure that machinist had an Orpheus t-shirt on. Okay, we'd probably gone to the pub with them as well. Again, that created quite a different relationship. That when we asked them to take on risk, we said, we've never made this part before, you never made this part before, we need it done really, really quickly, and we need you to give us a schedule where you're not padding it out with risk, because we need you to be as quickly as possible. That relationship of trust was fundamental in going much quicker. And sometimes they got it wrong, and sometimes we'd share that cost and that kind of thing, and that was okay because we had a relationship that we knew worked. Okay, so here's a story where it didn't go so well, and then we fixed it. So right at the start of probably the first 6 months of Orpheus, we're in lockdown, we're doing Scrum, and there was probably up to 6 Scrum teams, and we had some integration. And I think Keith and Angeline came at this point and said, you do some good stuff, but your integration's a bit crap, to be honest. But we were like, no, it's not, it's great, it's great. Anyway, and then we tried to integrate for our first major iteration of the engine. And guess what? That milestone was always in the next sprint. And it came to next sprint. Oh, don't worry, next sprint, next sprint, next sprint. And we just came across what I had been fearing the whole way through the project up to this point, which was you suddenly stall in the program. And when you really have to nail down a deliverable, it just starts dragging out and out and out. And I've had this in loads of the programs I've had before my career at Rolls-Royce. It's like, we can't have this again, because we're just going to end up in exactly the same place as we did before. So we did a bit of work, and we looked at what we could do to change these things. And so we looked at a piece from Scaled Agile Framework, SAFe, called Program Increment Planning. And this is really a technique where teams would come together and plan the work traditionally for the next 3 weeks, but we only did a 6-week increment first time round. And rather than us telling the teams what to do and just using a priority system known as priority 1, priority 2, priority 3 for all the work across the teams, that was complete crap, did not work at all. But this worked. And the teams came together, planned out all the work on Kanban boards, agreed on the dependencies, understood what all their goals were, made sure their capacity was correct for their load at the team level, not me deciding that. And we went from a situation where the teams per sprint, so these are sprints on the x-axis, and we weren't delivering very well against those goals. So we thrashed the team, said, guys, you've just got to deliver, just work more hours. And what happened was, guess what, the hours went up, okay? And that's not good either, because the team were getting near burnout at this point. So then we're like, oh, the team doesn't seem to be that good, so let's put a survey in that says how well the team are doing. Okay, so how sustainable is the work? 3%, okay, that's probably my vote, so it's okay. And then throughout this exercise, we turned it around. So rather than just this hard link between the only way to increase output is to increase input by just putting more hours in, we said, actually, if you change the mechanism of delivery, you can keep your input sustainable and you can improve your output and your outcomes. So that improved. So delivery is up, bookings are down, and sustainability in the team is sustainable. And that's improved ever since. And that's probably one of the main innovations that we've been scaling out as well. Almost there, okay. Final one, so Azure DevOps. I'm not here to say Azure DevOps is the answer to all your questions at all, okay? It was a solution that we were given, okay? It was far from perfect, but we needed a system that could share information in a transparent way, that could visualize workflow, that could connect information together, that we could run queries and do our load cap planning in an agile way. Azure DevOps gave us that. And we added up other bits onto it as well. And a lot of those things where the team just used a combination of Excel and macros, as we love in Rolls-Royce, to bolt on all these extra capabilities. But it was really important that the team had one place to go to for all its information, and that was connected, okay? And there's other ways of doing that, and the people in here today who will tell you better ways to do it than we did it. But the point I'm trying to make here is it's really important to have that information transparent to the team. It was really powerful. Okay. So what next? So Orpheus, the main part of Orpheus took about 2 years, and then since then, we've had follow-on extension of that program to continue development of that product into market. And both myself and Pauli were lucky enough to be, Pauli still leading that organization, I was leading it as well. And we built Orpheus Works. So Orpheus Works, where we took all the surrounding projects in the portfolio and defense and future programs, and we adapted the Orpheus approach so all of those programs were delivering in the same way. Okay? And they've had really good successes as well. And repeated that same success, and here's a good proportion of that team going bowling. And that was, again, probably one of the proudest moments of my career was to see this collection of people where we hadn't just done Orpheus once and it was a fluke. We'd actually proven that you could scale it to other teams as well. So where's next after that? So Rolls-Royce is going through a transformation at quite scale, probably the biggest transformation many people have seen. And as part of that, we're also trying to enter new products to market. So I've taken on a new role. So I'm now the Chief of Agile in Rolls-Royce. And one of my roles is to look at how can Agile be brought to the rest of Rolls-Royce in the same way we took it to Orpheus Works. And the Ultrafan is going to, we want Ultrafan to be successful for Rolls-Royce. In this snippet, we've got Tufan talking about the small engine, or a smaller version engine that he wants to bring to market. So I can say that without getting myself into trouble, because that's in the press. But really the ambition is that this will be delivered in the same, at least with this learning from Orpheus, that we will be delivering that in half the time, with half the cost we traditionally would be. So we are going both feet in with Agile in Rolls-Royce going forwards. And great to have lots of people here we can talk about working out how that would work and share those experiences as well. So I'll finish on that it's quite an exciting time to be in Rolls-Royce and to be doing Agile as well. So any questions? And thank you very much for listening to me and Pauli.
There are two ways of asking questions. One is via a roving mic, and I'm looking for someone at the back of the room to move. Yeah, Abby's doing it. And the other one is via Menti, and we'll keep the Menti open for all of the talks. So if you don't want to use the microphone, if you want to have a question that's anonymous, then you can submit that through Menti. Peter has the first question.
Okay, all the other questions will be much better after this one. So having gone through this beautiful transformation, and congratulations, how would you halve it again? Do you have thoughts on that? Because you're going to halve it in 15 years, 10 years. So have you got ideas on how you make another step change? Thank you.
I would say that's why we're here. We want to find out what's next. I don't think we can. We've got a team now that's got the mindset to change and to look for better, strive for better was your phrase. Just trying to link back, Keith, to you. So the team's ready for that. How do we continue to lead that charge is the next question. It's quite easy in a big company like Rolls-Royce to get quite insular in terms of how you think. So, I'm quite excited to be here and hopefully have the opportunity to talk to some of you about your experiences, what you're doing. How can we learn from that? How might we work together even to develop some new ways? So that's, I guess, from my slightly parochial perspective on Orpheus and Orpheus Works. Alex's challenge is to scale what we did with 50, 120 to 40,000. Sorry, no pressure. So in terms of the benefit that we will get from that, that is huge if we can nail that. So it's almost, we want to keep learning going forward, but we know we don't want to miss that opportunity to share and effectively exploit the work that we've done to good effect. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, there's these two sides, which is how do we keep pushing the art of the possible forward, and I'll come back to that as well, because I think that's where your curiosity, I think, is what is the next art of the possible. And then there's a bigger challenge almost, which is like how do you scale it, because we could create something that is exceptional for all the original Orpheus team. They could go even further, but then there's a little bit of, would you even be able to scale that to a broader organisation with different contexts, different markets, different challenges? So from the scaling point of view, the challenges that are knowing what works in what different environments, and there's the process side to it, but there's also the human motivation side to it, which is always the biggest challenge in any kind of transformation, right? Just how do you want people to want to do it? How do they just not see it as another top-down change program where they're just going to resist it because they just want to get on with their day job and go home as early as they can? Now that's really undermining the potential of people. So how do you swap that mindset around? So I don't really have an answer to that at the moment. I've got ideas, but again, looking to seek others' insights. In terms of how you'd move the art of the possible forward, I'll quickly go to the obvious answer, right, which is the digital one. And I kind of say that with a pause because the digital solution, the AI solution, is poorly understood and often used as a brush to tar things with almost. In the same way, Agile is often also used as just make it better, just do it Agile, and no one really knows what that means. So the digital thing, I think, will be fundamentally different, but it has to come with the right mindset of often not work done, and a lot of the other spirit and principles. So digital works really well with Agile because the Agile gives people the change in habits and mindset, which will unlock what digital can give. If you just give digital tools to people who haven't changed their mindset, they will continue to deliver in the same way they always did, just possibly as inefficiently, just much, much more. So I think there's a link there between the digital transformation and the Agile mindsets. I think there's still a lot more to get from focusing on humans, I'd say. There's still, like, I think I think you coined this term once, which was it mindset eats digital for breakfast? Something like that? So I still think there's a lot there, and I think there's a lot around team-based incentives. There's a lot around how we think about skills and people development, which will unlock a lot more potential and a lot more robustly than simply getting AI to do everything as well. That's my honest answer. Is that okay? Thanks.
Yes. We're using the digital tools. That wasn't a starter. We're using the digital tools. So there's a question on the Menti. As organizations look to scale learning, how do we ensure new teams feel ownership and affinity in the same way that the Orpheus team did? Any tips?
You can do it, Alex.
Thank you very much for that question. Yeah.
Is that you, is it?
So, sorry. It's a great question. So, I'm through that question, I'm thinking about what am I doing recently with the new teams I'm working with. So, a lot of it is finding what is their story. Okay, what is their story? What is the narrative that they will place themselves within, so they have that ownership with it? Because if they see it as not their own narrative, not their story, then they will be a passenger. So with one team we're working with at the moment, we said, okay, let's do it really differently. And they said, there's no point. It's all going to be too hard. You know, we've tried doing things differently before, and it doesn't work. And so there's that lack of accountability. And so we turned that on its head. So we used these think startup side of things, and we said, no, look, guys, look, this is your company. This is how you'd act, right? And so the think startup, and then creating a narrative, a personal motivation for them to connect their personal motivations to work was where we started with it. And that's the quick answer, but hopefully that's okay.
I know you're doing it in the new role, so
Thank you.
Oh. Do you want me to read this one out then as well? So, question, how did the funding model influence the way you planned and executed work? And did you really stop planning after 1 month? No, so I'll answer that second bit first because that's easier. The chart that Alex showed was just a snapshot. We were planning effectively sprint by sprint, so fortnight by fortnight, with a bit of an overview of where we wanted to get to over that sort of 18 months. So we have a framework. The paradigm change that we had there was the quarterly planning, or the PI planning that we now do quarterly. And that helps us take our roadmap and the strategy that the roadmap delivers. We connect that to, what's the word, Keith? Execution, by flowing down those goals from the roadmap to quarterly objectives to fortnightly objectives, etc. So it is, we've got quite a nice cohesive flow down and actually flow up, because a lot of it is about the right conversations with the teams to understand where they think they need to go next, not about telling them where they need to go. So no, we didn't. We do have eyes to the horizon. We try and do that at appropriate times. In terms of the funding picture, that wasn't straightforward, and I basically assumed that we would be successful and that we would need to carry on. We have had a bit of a bumpy ride. Probably if you're in the defence industry anyway, you'll know that the Strategic Defence Review and the new government is causing a lot of ripples across funding programmes as we speak. So it's never a really secure environment to do R&D type programmes in. So we have had to ebb and flow sometimes with when we can place purchase orders, for instance. But the nice thing that we've got is if we are working on a quarterly basis and then a 2-weekly basis, we almost say, well, look, we're not sure what's going to happen after that. If we did, great, but it would change anyway. So let's not worry. We know the direction we want to go in. If we're going to win, let's continue down that direction, and we will have faith that if we're doing the right things and winning, then that pathway will open up for us. And so far it has, and that's really testament to the view of the customer and potential customers actually, that what the team have achieved is going to bring great value to not just our company but to the defence industry as well. So, and the MOD.
There's a couple more in the room.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me stand up. First of all, great presentation and congratulations on the wonderful work.
Thank you.
I had two parts, two different questions. The first one is, I'm assuming that you have not changed any of the design process to crunch that time, right? So I'm assuming that you still followed all the steps that were needed. How did you manage to half the time with half the people? I mean, one is you put them in a room, their focus was probably 100%, only that, right? Probably that could be one of the things. And then you brought in that tool set also, the DevOps, along with all the digital tools. Were there other things that helped there to crunch that time and still make that? That was the first part of it. Any learnings from there? The second question is on the cost, right? You left shifted the entire make to within the middle of the design iteration cycle, right? That's a huge risk. I mean, a lot of the cost is in the make side. How did you manage that cost not blowing over? I mean, if there was a huge design change and that required completely changing your make process, where did you draw the line? I think you mentioned you shared some of the cost with your suppliers also at some point, but how did you overall manage the cost within the program? I think these were the two things.
Do you want to talk quality and I'll do the second one?
Yeah, okay.
Do that.
Sounds good. So we took I think in your question, I think you meant that to be changed in design processes, but you actually said you took what we needed. I think we took what we needed from the design process. So the design process is scalable, and often more scalable than people often actually use it for in Rolls-Royce. I think they tend to stick with what's happened before because they trust it and they know it, but really configured it to be exactly what we needed it to do. So because this is not a flying product, we did not nearly have as much documentation, other bits to go through, but we still need to make sure we didn't hurt anybody, even in the test bed. And some ways we mitigated that was we just built a big yellow steel cage around the engine so that we mitigated that risk of it damaging the test bed and other bits as well. So there are elements in there where because the overall point of this is we taxed waste and not value, okay? And so we made absolutely sure that people understood what real value was across the program, and we made sure that anything that wasn't in aid and service of that value was cut out. So that's where the art of not work not done comes from. And there's an awful lot of amount of extra work done to mitigate risks where those risks aren't really maybe worthy of it, or there's different ways of mitigating those risks. So we had multiple attempts at this engine. So if the first one went through and didn't work out, rather than stopping and going back, we said, no, just let it go, let it flush through the system, because that will continue to surface unknown risks in our system. And then our second engine, which would be of a higher step up in performance, the next MVP, would then reap the rewards of that de-risking. And we found that to be very effective, that almost we almost got to a point where we said, like, if it assembles, it's going in the engine. That's the only quality requirement we've got in, because that just helped surface things, whereas normally my experience was we'd hit a risk, we'd stop, fix that, and then continue on. And what we could have been doing is surfacing all the other risks ahead and treating all of those in advance. So that's one of the biggest ways that we took time out of the overall program as well. There's an awful lot of wait time in our traditional programs, and not nearly as effective as we think we are. So, and there's still plenty more to go at, I think, in our programs as well to make that even more effective.
Yeah, so on the second part, how do we manage the costs? So Alex actually already touched on our iterative approach to learning and developing the product as well. And I guess that's, like, if you learn something the first time round that is just going to wash your business case away, then you stop, right? don't chase bad money. But we were always really encouraged by the progress we'd made on that, and the iterative approach also helped our customers and our funders have more confidence, because we said, well, look, this is what we're trying to achieve here, this is why, and we did it. So that was always really valuable in persuading stakeholders of the goodness. We did take quite an interesting approach to working to a budget. We had a team, as you mentioned, that was pretty much dedicated, and that, I think, is really important. Because we had a fixed head count, we could forecast our labour costs pretty well. We worked closely with our suppliers to understand hardware costs. And it cost me a coffee machine because Sinead said, will you buy me a coffee machine if we can get our spend within 0.5% of the budget this year? And the team did it. They worked together to understand what their risks were and what was coming and what wasn't, and they managed to do it. So that coffee machine, it stings a bit, but actually it was quite a nice thing to do. But yeah, so we were able to manage our costs through largely a fairly fixed headcount. What we didn't realise, I think, when we started was how valuable having a fixed headcount was going to be in encouraging innovation in the teams. Because these guys, and Alex mentioned that the mindset of previous experience was, if we need a stress engineer, we're going to have to, we'll ask the organisation for a stress engineer, and we'll work on this until he arrives. But we said there's no cavalry coming here. You're not getting any more people. We can't afford them. So what options have we got? And we got great examples of teams taking on, understanding that was their challenge, and using what I call the bountiful mindset, although somebody else called it something different, of, well, what can we do with what we've got? And this is where a lot of this cross-skilling actually started to show real exciting benefits for both delivery, but also for development of individuals as well. And because you've already paid, you're already paying for that capability, suddenly it almost feels like it's free, because you've got this extra, agile capability that will move to solve problems as they arrive and challenges. We did need to set up quite a good coaching structure to support them so that they could do that from our experts. But nonetheless, we had really good benefits from that cross-skilling, and that helps with that kind of challenge on the finance as well, you see. So.
Doug, the mic is on. So we're not short of questions. So all the ones on the Menti, I think I'm going to ask these guys to do homework in front of the camera and maybe capture the answers to those behind the scenes. But maybe we'll have a last one from the floor, and then we'll step into the next session.
Hello. Great talk. Brilliant vision. I love the way you've gone with this. I don't know if you can hear me. In terms of the strategy and the forward view, would you see this as very much a self-organising, self-managed set of teams? And with that being the case, one of the key parts of that is decision making and where you set the waterline for decision making. And how do you manage that?
I'd be excited to answer, but do you want to?
Oh.
Up to you.
You go first.
So from my perspective, I think I've learned or reflected that there are three key things for leadership. One is to set a vision of where we're going and what's important to in terms of outcomes to achieve that. The other one is to remove impediments to that, get rid of blockers. And the third is to create a culture that we want to spread and flourish that helps the team feel empowered to go do great things. In terms of decision making, what we've tried to do is give teams much more context than they're used to. And the important thing about that is then they can understand what's important and what's not and start making some of those decisions themselves. We've built up this coaching network as well, so where there are technical decisions that perhaps traditionally teams wouldn't be able to make themselves, they've now got much faster access to just coaching and conversations rather than waiting 2 weeks for a big design review. So yeah, we've definitely tried to empower the teams to make decisions. I'm not saying we are perfect on that by a long shot, and there's no doubt a lot more we can still do that, because it's in a corporation of 40,000, it's a very different way of working, and it's a constant challenge to try and maintain that. But certainly it's an aspiration we have, and we try and hold ourselves to it as much as we can.
Yeah, fantastic, really good answer, Pauli. That was pretty good. And I'll throw in a few extra bits, which were, our goal is not to have teams that are self-managed. Our goal is to have teams that are aligned and able to deliver as quickly and as easily as possible. And to achieve that, normally you want alignment, particularly around the what, and then the how is meant to be a bit more freedom. So previously, when people have heard of self-managed teams, they think that means completely self-managed. They're just allowed to do whatever they want, and work whatever they want. And that's not really the intent. We aim for hyper-focus in the team on exactly what the customer wanted, and they would all work together on that. And then we gave them as much freedom as we could do in terms of the how. And we managed that we didn't realize it at the time. We read a bit more on it as we went through the program, the leader model from David Markkanen, and Turn the Ship Around, those of you familiar with that. So getting to describing intent as the sweet spot of trying to get that alignment, but also that accountability and independence as well. Okay, thank you.
Time is not our friend. We're just 5 minutes over, and we're going to move into a break shortly. But just before we do, please show your appreciation for Alex and Pauli.